Hey Chelsea, how's it going? This is feedback for your animation. I know we spoke about it a little bit in class, but just wanted to give you my thoughts here about what's going on. It looks really great, like I said in class. It's like looks like a lot of good thought and a lot of good posing went into this. So, but let me start going through it with a fine tooth comb. This is v002, of course, and we'll see what my thoughts are. So yeah, I know we had talked a little bit about doing like some shorter, smaller steps and then getting bigger. I think like on some of these poses, I love what you have going on. Like this is a great dynamic run pose that you have going on here. I think maybe this one may be a little bit more appropriate to the end. Yeah, but this is cool because this is going to give you an opportunity to kind of do a type of walk cycle. It's a run cycle, but basically it's not entirely different from a walk cycle. And then it's going to give you the opportunity to kind of alter it through the course of its progression, which I think it's a really fantastic exercise for you to do. So it looks like, more or less we have the same kind of repetition of poses here, which is fine. But I'm just going to talk about those poses. Maybe it's not a repetition. No, I'm guessing that looks sort of the same, which is cool. That's fine. So I'll just take a look at like these two poses because I think we already kind of talked about how I would hope that they would advance. I think if you're doing a run like this, so maybe it's not entirely true in this pose. Okay, let me collect my thoughts. So the first thing I would say is if you're doing a run, this passing pose looks a little bit a little too passive, a passive passing pose. How about that? And I think I'm feeling that maybe from the red leg should maybe, that foot maybe needs to be a little bit more back. This is not the right drawing. So instead of showing you what not to do, maybe, I think if you're running, like I know when I said when you're walking, the foot kind of doesn't come far up off the ground. I think when you're running, you will pull your feet up a little bit more off the ground. It will be a little bit more dynamic because the character's putting like a little more energy into how they're locomoting. I think maybe even like it's going to be a little bit more appropriate to get the heel up here. Your character, your character does feel like maybe they're like a little bit squatted down, and I think that you're seeing that from your reference, which is fine. But as the character starts to get into this walk cycle, I think they're gonna like this pose feels kind of balanced, like their weight and center of gravity would be almost like straight down. They feel like they're in balance, and I feel like maybe as they run farther and farther, this kind of center area is gonna push out further. So it's like they're gonna be like leaning a little bit more forward as the run progresses. And I know that we talked about like the gait getting a little farther. This is, again, I'm probably crafting a horrible drawing here. It's ill-conceived. But you know what I'm trying to say. Like this front part will start like pushing forward, and the character's like kind of leaning, like really throwing their weight forward. You know what I'm saying? So those are just some thoughts. So yeah, as this progressives, I would say get into bigger and bigger strides like we talked about. So maybe this first one, the distance from here to here is going to be like a little too great. Maybe it's like, especially if you watch in your reference, you can see all these like tiny little steps, that the actor takes. I mean, I know they're not an actor, maybe they're an athlete. Maybe they're just a product of bad parenting. But you can see here, like this level of stride and anticipation of this foot plant because they know they're about to like push off. That's great. You know what I mean? And so try to make sure to find like these really cool poses from your reference and try to see if you can't get them incorporated. I know that you're probably just mocking something quickly together, so that's totally fine. But yeah, cool reference. I would say on your jump, just looking at it overall, it feels like I would want to see slightly more of an arc as the character jumps across the gap. Because right now it's like, if I look at their center of gravity, we're going from like here to here to here to here. That's a really cool pose. As far as the legs, as far as I'm concerned with the legs. Cool. So when I turn on ghosting, and I know you're just like getting into this. Did I turn on ghosting? Yeah. Okay, so we can see like the arc for your character is kind of like this. I would maybe see if you can't push it to be a little bit higher, like have them jump a little higher. I think that's going to be a little more dynamic and a little more fun. And it's hard to say exactly how high this person in your reference is jumping. But if I was to give you a few pose notes on this, I would get this leg like back more like how your character is here. Like this is a really dynamic kind of shape, like within the legs here. Here's like the pelvis and stuff. So maybe this blue leg, maybe bring it back a little bit more. I probably drew it way too long, way too big. You know what I mean? And like you can even improve upon the poses that your character's doing. Like maybe you want to tuck this leg in. Maybe not though. It's fine not to do that. But one thing to note is like what's nice about this is your character makes sure that this leg is kind of pointing to where the contact is going to happen. That's a really big foot. Where the contact's going to happen with the wall. So like here it feels like the character kind of overshoots the surface of the wall. You know what I mean? Like it's going to be more exciting and more dynamic and all that if your character like makes contact like just with the edge. Like make it a close call, I would say, a little bit, in how you wind up posing out this character. Like try to push things a little bit more, to exaggerate them. Like here in your reference, like this torso is kind of like straight up and down a bit, but maybe in your posing you want to like have it lean back a little bit more. Think about your line of action and like try to design the poses as best as you can to make them super cool. So in general, like even though you're posing very similar to how this pose is, it's always going to be best if you can kind of like get arms out away from the body. This is just a horrible stick figure. You know what I mean? Whatever you can do to kind of get the limbs visible, and not kind of stacked over the head. Like here I can see a little hand poking up from behind, but when you're trying to do this stuff, maybe it's best to kind of like try to design it where things are a little more clear, a little more clear in silhouette. Hopefully that makes sense what I'm saying. Like here I like the hand pose on what your reference is doing. So maybe, we can pull this hand away from the head a little bit and get like some negative space in there or something, Like just try to think about that stuff as you're going through and posing. Like maybe this leg could be brought back. I probably already said that in a previous, yeah. Okay, never mind. Yeah, but all in all, this is looking really cool. What I really love about this reference is how he makes contact with this one foot here, but the second foot doesn't. It like continues across the wall. Like this is really cool. That's if you can include stuff like that in animation, like it's going to be not what the audience expects, right? Because the audience probably watching this is going to expect that blue leg to make contact with the wall and stuff. So that kind of like just continuing, like the momentum continues across, I think is really cool and really interesting. In the framing and how you have the camera, I almost feel, and this is maybe, it's up to you, this is probably not the most important part of the animation, but I would almost want to see what's going on here off camera, because I feel like the landing is an interesting part of this little vignette, this little tiny story that you're telling, and we're kind of missing it because it happens off screen. You know what I mean? So I know that we don't have a lot of reference about what happens after he goes off screen, but this may be a fun way, maybe not fun, but it may just be a good opportunity to kind of like push yourself or test yourself or try to like how do we make him, you know, if you move the camera where we could see more of this, what's going on over here, that could give you an opportunity to kind of like find another piece of reference of someone landing and kind of try to stitch them together, or to see if you can't come up with something plausible on that back half, or that back action of the landing or whatever. But that's not super mission critical. So don't, if that feels like a lot, then don't worry about it. It's just a thought. But anyways, this looks great. What a great start. What a great piece of reference. I'm excited to see this developing. So thank you for your submission, and thanks for everything, and I will see you next week. Oh yeah, feel free to write with questions, or office hours are always available. So yeah, but great stuff. Thanks.